She didn't say, "Excuse me." She didn't say, "Can I help you?" The first words out of her mouth were, "This floor is not open to walk-ins." Imara Osei-Weston had been standing at the elevator for less than 30 seconds. She was wearing a gray cardigan, dark slacks, and a pair of flats she'd had for 6 years. No jewelry except the small gold stud earrings her mother gave her the year she graduated from Howard. She was carrying a manila folder and a cup of coffee that had gone cold somewhere between the parking garage and the lobby. She looked, by most accounts, like someone's administrative assistant. Maybe a social worker. Maybe a woman who had the wrong floor. That was apparently all the information Patricia Holt needed. Patricia Holt was the floor manager for the private client division of Prescott Capital Partners, a wealth management firm headquartered in a glass tower in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. She had been in that position for 11 years. She wore her authority like a second blazer, stiff, pressed, worn even when it wasn't necessary. And she had a talent honed over those 11 years for deciding very quickly who belonged on the 14th floor and who did not. Imara did not. "I have an appointment," Imara said. Patricia's expression didn't change. "With whom?" "With the executive team." "I was told to come up directly." "Who told you that?" "The letter of invitation I received." Patricia made a small sound. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. The sound a person makes when they're choosing to remain polite in a situation they find slightly absurd. "We don't send walk-in invitations to the private floor. You'll want to check in downstairs with the general reception. They can direct you to the appropriate." "I checked in downstairs," Imara said. "They gave me a badge and sent me up. They shouldn't have done that." Patricia said it with complete certainty, as though the fault, the entire chain of error, began and ended with the lobby staff, as though Imara herself were a clerical mistake. "I'm going to need you to go back down and wait in the main lobby while I sort this out." Imara looked at her for a moment, just looked. She had a way of being still that unsettled people who expected her to react, to apologize, to fill the silence with explanation. She didn't fill it. "I'll wait here," she said. Something shifted in Patricia's posture. It was small. A squaring of the shoulders, a tightening around the eyes. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that this is a secure area reserved for our high-net-worth clients. We can't have." "I understand what this floor is for," Imara said. "Then you understand why I can't just— What's your name?" The question stopped Patricia mid-sentence. "I'm sorry, your name. And your title, if you have one." A pause. "Patricia Holt, floor manager." "Thank you, Patricia." Imara shifted the manila folder to her other arm. "I'd like you to call your director of client relations and let them know that the 11 o'clock appointment has arrived. Can you do that?" Patricia stared at her for a beat longer than was comfortable. Then she turned, walked to the reception desk 12 feet away, picked up the phone, and dialed. She spoke quietly enough that her words didn't carry, but her body language, the set of her back, the way she glanced once over her shoulder, communicated everything her voice chose not to. There was a long pause on Patricia's end of the call. Then she listened. Then she listened some more. Imara drank the rest of her cold coffee and waited. The truth about Imara Osei-Weston, the part that Patricia Holt didn't know, couldn't have known, or more precisely, hadn't bothered to find out, was that Imara had been the silent majority shareholder of Prescott Capital Partners for the past 14 months. Not because she'd bought in recently, because she had built the fund that became the financial backbone of what Prescott now was. The story went back 22 years, to a woman named Gloria Weston, Imara's mother, who had started a private investment collective in Greensboro with 9 other black women, pooling resources at a time when not a single bank in the city would extend them a business loan worth consideration. The collective had grown. It had been formalized. It had returned staggering numbers year after year by making investments in communities and sectors that larger firms dismissed as too niche, too volatile, too unprestigious. And then, 8 years ago, a firm called Prescott Capital Partners had approached the Weston Collective with a merger offer. The terms had been complex. The negotiations had taken nearly 2 years. And when the dust settled, Gloria Weston had retained a 43% equity stake, which, upon her death 14 months ago, had passed to her only child. Imara had not yet formally introduced herself to the executive team. She had been in the process of reviewing the firm's operational records, its client treatment protocols, its internal HR history. She had a financial attorney who had been doing much of the preliminary communication on her behalf. The meeting today, the 11 o'clock meeting, was the first one she had requested to attend in person. She had not told anyone in advance what she looked like. She had not told anyone what she planned to wear. She sometimes wondered, afterward, if some part of her had known. If she had chosen the gray cardigan, and the old flats, and the cold coffee, with some instinct she couldn't have named consciously. To see. To know. To have the information before she sat down at the table. Patricia came back from the phone looking like a woman who had been told something she did not know how to process. Miss Osei-Weston, she said, and the addition of the last name, the formal use of it, the careful pronunciation, was the first signal that something had changed. I'm so sorry for the delay. Someone from the executive team will be right out. Thank you, Imara said. Can I get you anything while you wait? Water? Or, I'm fine. Patricia stood for a moment in that particular way that people stand when they want to say something and can't find the right version of it. Then she said, I apologize if I was. We'll have a chance to talk about it, Imara said. Not right now. She didn't say it cruelly. She didn't raise her voice. She said it the way you might say something to someone you fully intend to deal with thoughtfully, at the appropriate time, in the appropriate setting, which was exactly what she meant. The elevator behind her opened, and a man in his early 60s came out moving quickly. Too quickly. The kind of walk that happens when someone has just been told they have made a serious error. His name was Douglas Fenn, the firm's director of client relations, and he had the slightly panicked energy of a person, recalibrating in real time. Mrs. Osei-Weston. He extended his hand. Douglas Fenn. We spoke by phone in March. I can't tell you how glad we are you're here in person, please. He gestured toward the interior of the floor, toward the conference rooms beyond the reception desk. The team is assembled. Can I take your folder? I've got it, she said. He nodded. Of course. Right this way. She walked past the reception desk, past the chairs where clients waited, past a long window that looked out over Charlotte's skyline. She did not look back at Patricia Holt. She didn't need to. She already had what she'd come for. The conference room on the 14th floor had a long mahogany table and windows on two sides, and a view that, on a clear day, stretched further than seemed reasonable. 8 people were seated when Imara came in. They stood when she entered, all of them quickly with the particular attentiveness of people who understood what this meeting actually was. The introductions took 10 minutes. There were managing partners and senior advisors and a compliance officer named Stuart Gaines, who seemed like he had not slept in several days. There was a woman named Clara Fitch, head of operations, who had the careful eyes of someone who had been quietly preparing for this meeting for months and was now assessing how closely reality matched her predictions. Imara sat at the head of the table. Not because she was told to. There was, in the room, a sort of natural physics around her. The table had an obvious head, and the people in the room had arranged themselves in a way that left it open, as though they had been expecting her to claim it, as though they had already conceded that question before she walked through the door. She opened the manila folder. Inside were 3 things: a summary document prepared by her legal team, a copy of the equity transfer agreement executed 14 months ago, and a single handwritten note on gray stationery that her mother had written in the last week of her life. Imara didn't show the 3rd item to anyone in the room. That one was for her. I want to start, she said, by telling you what I'm not here to do. I'm not here to restructure the firm. I'm not here to replace anyone in this room. I am not here because something has gone wrong with the numbers. The numbers, actually, are the one thing about this firm that I have no serious complaint with. She paused. What I am here to do is introduce myself properly, establish what my involvement going forward will look like, and address one specific area of operations that my review team flagged and that I would like to understand better. Douglas Fenn leaned slightly forward. We're fully prepared to. The client experience on this floor, Imara said. A shift. Not dramatic, but there. Specifically, she continued, The protocols that determine who is permitted access to the private client level, and how those determinations are made. She looked around the table. I'd like to walk through HR records related to client intake for the past 3 years. I'd also like to understand the hiring criteria for floor management. She let that land. Do any of you have questions before we begin? There were no questions. The review took 4 hours. Not because the documents were complicated. Imara's team had already been through them, but because she wanted the people in the room to walk through them with her, to be present for the reading of their own record, to see, without her having to narrate it explicitly, what the numbers and the notes and the complaint logs and the incident reports added up to. Not good. The picture they added up to was not good. 14 formal complaints in 3 years from clients who had been questioned, delayed, or turned away on the 14th floor. Of those 14, 11 were from clients who were black or brown. The 3 who were white had all, according to the notes, been dressed in what the reports described as casual or non-business attire. The comparison was not subtle. The managing partner, a man named Gregory Hale, said at one point, "I want to be clear that these incidents were addressed through our standard HR process." "I've read the HR resolutions," Imara said. "They averaged 45 days to close and resulted in verbal counseling in 9 of 11 cases." She set the page down. "That's what I wanted you to see." Gregory Hale did not say anything else about it. What happened next was procedural but not cold. Imara was not interested in performing anger, and she was interested in change that would actually hold. She laid out, with the help of her attorney on conference call, a set of conditions that would govern her continued engagement with the firm. New client intake standards, a formal review board with outside oversight, required training for floor-level management, and a review of the employment file of the floor manager on duty that morning, whose conduct during the 11 o'clock appointment would be addressed through proper HR channels with her direct involvement. She did not say Patricia Holt's name in the conference room. She didn't have to. The meeting ended at 3:15 in the afternoon. Douglas Fenn walked her to the elevator. He was quieter now than he had been at the start of the day, with the particular quietness of a person who had just spent four hours understanding something they should have understood sooner. "I want to say," he started. "You don't have to," Imara said. "I think I do." He looked at the elevator doors. "The way you were received this morning was useful information," she said. "I mean that." He looked at her. "I've been reviewing documents and phone reports and second-hand accounts for 14 months, she said. "What happened this morning told me more than any of them." She pressed the button for the lobby. "That's not a compliment to the firm, but it's the truth." The doors opened. She stepped in. "We'll speak again soon, Mr. Fenn." "Yes," he said. "We will." The doors closed. 6 weeks later, the changes Imara had outlined went into formal implementation. The new client intake protocol was drafted with input from a third-party equity consulting firm. The training requirement for floor management became mandatory and recurring. The outside review board was constituted with 3 independent members, one of whom had been suggested by Imara herself. A woman named Dr. Arlene Booker, a professor of organizational behavior at UNC Charlotte, who had spent 20 years studying how institutional bias operates at the level of daily workplace decision-making. Invisible. Routine. Unchallenged. Patricia Holt did not remain on the 14th floor. The investigation into the events of that morning, cross-referenced against the existing HR complaint record, which documented 2 prior incidents involving similar encounters under her management, resulted in her removal from the floor manager position. She was offered a reassignment to a back-office administrative role. She declined and separated from in seniority. She declined and separated from the firm instead. Some people, when they heard the outcome, said it was too harsh. Others said it wasn't harsh enough. Imara, when asked by her attorney what she thought, said she thought the process had worked the way a process was supposed to work. She said she believed in consequences that were proportionate, documented, and arrived at through procedure rather than impulse. She said she had not enjoyed any part of the day that had made it necessary. What she did not say, because she didn't say it to many people, only to the ones she trusted most, was was what she had felt, standing at that elevator for those first 30 seconds. She had felt it before, of course she had. Anyone who had walked through the world in a black woman's body for 51 years knew what that particular feeling was. The one that arrived when a room decided what you were before you opened your mouth. It had a texture to it that never got comfortable no matter how many times it happened. A familiar, unwelcome weight. But she had also felt something else that morning, standing there with her cold coffee and her manila folder. She had felt her mother, not figuratively, not in some abstract sense of legacy or inheritance. She had felt Gloria Weston, the way you feel a hand on your shoulder when no one is there. That specific warmth that doesn't belong to the temperature of the room. Her mother, who had walked into rooms her whole life and been told, in various ways and varying degrees of subtlety, that she had somehow ended up somewhere she didn't belong. Her mother, who had responded to every single one of those moments by belonging there more thoroughly than anyone who had tried to exclude her. The gold studs in Imara's ears had been Gloria's first. She had worn them on purpose. There is a photograph on the wall of the Weston Collective's original meeting room in Greensboro. The room is still there, maintained as a kind of archive, part of a community foundation that Gloria had established before she got sick. The photograph shows 10 women sitting around a folding table in someone's living room. They are dressed in what they had. Work clothes, church clothes. The nicest thing they owned that was also practical. They are looking at the camera with an expression that is not quite smiling and not quite serious. It is the expression of people who know exactly what they are about to do, and know that no one else in the world yet believes it is possible. Gloria Weston is second from the left. Imara has a copy of that photograph in her office, not the Charlotte office. She works primarily from home, the way she has since long before it became fashionable. The photograph is on the wall next to the window where the morning light hits it first. She looked at it the evening after the meeting at Prescott Capital Partners, sitting at her desk with a glass of water and the quiet that comes at the end of a day that required more of you than you expected. She thought about what her mother would have said. Gloria Weston had not been a woman given to dramatic pronouncements. She had been precise and patient and occasionally very funny. And she had believed with a kind of bone-deep certainty that the way you responded to being underestimated was not with bitterness but with thoroughness. You showed up. You stayed. You did the work so completely that the argument against your presence became too expensive to maintain. Imara thought she had done that today. She thought her mother would have agreed. She picked up the photograph, not the one on the wall, but a smaller one she kept in the desk drawer, a copy she had made after the funeral, the one she carried when she traveled, and she held it for a moment. "Okay, Mama," she said. That was all. She put the photograph back in the drawer, finished her water, and turned off the desk lamp. "Before you go, and I hope you stay with this one for a moment, because it's worth it. There's a question I want you to sit with, if you had been in that lobby. Not as Imara Osei-Weston, not as Patricia Holt, but as one of the people standing nearby, one of the ones who saw it happen and said nothing, or one of the ones who maybe could have said something. What would you have done? That's not a question with a comfortable answer. Most of us, if we're honest, have been in rooms where something happened that we knew wasn't right, and we did the calculation, the invisible one, the one that takes about half a second, and we stayed quiet. Not because we were bad people, because speaking up in those moments costs something, and most of us haven't decided in advance what we're willing to pay. Imara Osei-Weston didn't need anyone to speak up for her. That's clear. She had exactly what she needed. But the next person might not. If this story stayed with you, hit like and let me know. And if you've got someone in your life who needs to hear it, a younger person, someone who's been told in any of the 1,000 quiet ways that they don't belong where they're standing, share it with them. That's what these stories are for. I'll see you in the next one.